Natalie Summers was 1 minute from walking out of Rosalind's cafe when the universe decided she needed a front row seat to family drama that wasn't her own. All she wanted was a peaceful Sunday morning with her iced coffee and croissant, but instead she found herself at a table adjacent to what was quickly becoming the brunch from hell. "Ryan, darling, I simply don't understand why you can't make time for your mother anymore," said a well-dressed older woman, her voice dripping with practiced martyrdom. "Ever since you took over that company, it's like I don't exist." Natalie tried not to stare at the handsome man across from the older woman, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and the kind of jawline that belonged on magazine covers. He wore a simple button-down rolled at the sleeves, revealing tanned forearms and an expensive watch. His expression was one of strained patience. "Mom, we had dinner together last week," he replied quietly, "and I called you twice this week." "Oh, spare me, 10-minute phone calls where you're obviously distracted by your precious work. You used to be such a good boy before all this success went to your head." Natalie sipped her coffee and pretended to be engrossed in her phone, but it was impossible not to overhear. The cafe was relatively small, and the woman's voice was designed to carry. "Rebecca, please," said an older gentleman at the table, presumably the father. "Let's just enjoy our brunch." "I will not, Norman," Rebecca snapped. "Someone needs to remind our son of his family obligations. Maybe if he spent less time with those models he parades around with and more time finding a suitable wife, he wouldn't be so self-centered." Natalie winced. The poor guy, Ryan, apparently looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. She noticed the slight tightening of his jaw, the way his fingers pressed against the tablecloth. "I don't parade around with models," Ryan said, his voice low but firm. "I've been busy restructuring the entire shipping department. We're in the middle of our biggest expansion yet." "And there he goes, talking about work again," Rebecca said with a dramatic sigh, turning to the others at the table, a couple who looked uncomfortable with the entire exchange. "He thinks running Nixon Pharmaceuticals makes him too important for family." Natalie nearly choked on her coffee. Nixon Pharmaceuticals was one of the largest medical research companies in the country. She'd read about their groundbreaking work in developing affordable medications for chronic conditions. If this man was running that company, he wasn't just successful, he was changing lives. "Mom, can we please just order?" Ryan asked. "What's the rush? Another important meeting. Or is my company just that unbearable?" Something in Natalie snapped. Maybe it was because her own mother had been similarly manipulative before therapy helped them both establish boundaries. Maybe it was the unmistakable pain in Ryan's eyes that resonated with her own experiences. Or maybe it was just the fact that she'd witnessed 15 minutes of what appeared to be a regular routine of emotional abuse. Before she could think better of it, Natalie stood up and approached their table. "Excuse me," she said, her heart hammering in her chest. "I couldn't help overhearing, and I just wanted to say that your son seems incredibly patient and respectful despite your continuous attempts to belittle his achievements and manipulate him with guilt." The table fell silent. Ryan stared at her with wide eyes, a mixture of shock and something else, relief, perhaps, washing over his face. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "I beg your pardon, this is a private family matter." "It stopped being private when you decided to broadcast it across the cafe," Natalie replied, surprised by her own steadiness. "Look, I don't know you, and I don't know your son, but I do know toxic behavior when I see it. He's clearly accomplished something remarkable with his career, and instead of being proud, you're using it as ammunition against him." "Young lady, you have no idea what you're talking about," Rebecca huffed, her face flushing. "I think she does, Mom," Ryan said quietly, standing up. He was even taller than Natalie had realized. "Thank you," he said to her with a genuine smile that transformed his face. Natalie suddenly felt mortified. What had she done? This wasn't her family, wasn't her business. "I'm sorry for interrupting," she said. "I should go." "No, please," Ryan said, extending his hand. "I'm Ryan Nixon, and you are Natalie Summers," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was warm and firm. "And I really am sorry for butting in. I just don't apologize," he said. "It was refreshing." Rebecca stood up, gathering her designer purse. I won't sit here and be insulted by some stranger. Norman, we're leaving. She looked at Ryan with disappointment. Call me when you're ready to apologize for this embarrassment. The older man looked apologetically at his son before following his wife. The other couple murmured awkward goodbyes and trailed after them, leaving Ryan and Natalie standing alone at the table. I just ruined your family brunch, didn't I? Natalie grimaced. Ryan laughed, a rich sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Trust me, you didn't ruin anything that wasn't already in shambles. He gestured to her table. Can I join you? I owe you a proper thank you at the very least. Natalie nodded, feeling a strange flutter in her stomach as they moved to her small table by the window. Ryan was even more handsome up close, with intelligent green eyes that seemed to catch every detail. So, he said, settling into the chair across from her, do you make a habit of defending strangers from their overbearing mothers? First time, actually, she admitted with a small laugh. I'm usually much better at minding my own business. I'm glad you didn't today. He ran a hand through his dark hair. What you said was exactly what needed to be said, honestly. I've been trying to establish boundaries with my mother for years, but she's perfected the art of making me feel like the villain. I recognized the pattern, Natalie explained. My mom was similar before we both got help. It took me years to stop feeling guilty for having my own life. Ryan studied her with interest. What do you do, Natalie Summers, when you're not coming to the rescue of CEO sons? I'm a children's book illustrator, she replied. Much less glamorous than running a pharmaceutical empire. Are you kidding? That's incredible, Ryan said, his eyes lighting up. Any books I might recognize? Natalie smiled, surprised by his genuine interest. Maybe. I did the Moonbeam Adventures series and Pickle the Porcupine. No way. My niece is obsessed with Pickle, Ryan exclaimed. That's you. Your illustrations are amazing. Natalie felt a warm glow at his enthusiasm. There was something disarming about the way he focused completely on her when she spoke, as if nothing else in the room mattered. Their conversation flowed effortlessly from her work to his, from favorite coffee spots to childhood memories. Natalie learned that Ryan had taken over Nixon Pharmaceuticals 4 years ago after his father's retirement, transforming it from a traditional pharmaceutical company to one focused on making life-saving medications accessible to those who needed them most. It's not always popular with shareholders, he admitted, but I can't justify charging people thousands for medications they need to survive. That's really admirable, Natalie said, meaning it. Most people in your position would be focusing on maximizing profits. Ryan shrugged. I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. What I don't have is the knowledge that I did everything I could to help people who aren't as fortunate. He checked his watch and looked genuinely disappointed. I hate to cut this short, but I do have a meeting I need to prepare for. Of course, Natalie said, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment. It was nice meeting you, Ryan. He hesitated, then pulled out his business card and wrote something on the back. This is my personal number, he said, sliding it across the table. I'd really like to take you to dinner sometime, as a thank you if nothing else. Natalie picked up the card, feeling a smile spread across her face. I'd like that. Great, he said, looking genuinely pleased. I'll look forward to your call. As Ryan left the cafe, Natalie stared at the card in her hand, wondering if she'd imagined the entire interaction. Had she really just told off the mother of one of the country's most successful CEOs, and had he really just asked her out? Natalie waited 3 days before calling Ryan, not wanting to seem too eager. When his deep voice answered, the flutter returned to her stomach. I was beginning to think you weren't going to call, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. I considered framing your business card instead, she joked. How many people have the personal number of Ryan Nixon, pharmaceutical wonderkind? His laugh made her smile. Fewer than you might think, so about that dinner. They agreed to meet at Alois, a small but well-regarded restaurant known for its privacy important, Ryan explained, because the local business press tended to follow him when he dined at more prominent establishments. I hope that doesn't scare you off, he added. The publicity can be intense sometimes. I think I can handle it, Natalie replied, though she wasn't entirely sure. Her life as an illustrator was wonderfully low-key, spent mostly in her home studio with occasional meetings with publishers. The idea of being photographed or gossiped about was foreign territory. When Friday evening arrived, Natalie spent far too long choosing her outfit, finally settling on a deep blue wrap dress that her best friend insisted brought out her eyes. Her naturally wavy brown hair was left loose, and she kept her makeup minimal. As she stepped into her rideshare, she wondered what exactly she was getting herself into. Alois was even more charming than she'd expected: warm lighting, intimate tables, and walls lined with local art. Ryan was already waiting in a corner booth, standing when he saw her approach. He wore a tailored navy suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, but his warm smile eliminated any intimidation factor. "You look beautiful," he said as she slid into the booth. "Thank you," she replied, feeling a blush creep up her neck. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Dinner was even better than their impromptu cafe meeting. Ryan was attentive and genuinely interested in her work, asking thoughtful questions about her creative process. In turn, Natalie was fascinated by the challenges he faced running a company with thousands of employees. "The hardest part is balancing the human element with business necessities," he explained over their shared dessert. "Every decision affects real people's lives." "That's a lot of responsibility to carry," Natalie observed. Ryan nodded. "It is. But it's also why I can't back down when my mother pressures me to delegate more or focus on starting a family. The work we're doing is too important." "Has she reached out since Sunday?" Natalie asked carefully. "Oh, she sent a lengthy email about how I've changed and don't respect her anymore," Ryan said with a resigned smile. "Standard operating procedure. Dad called to apologize, though." "I'm sorry if I made things worse," Natalie said. Ryan reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You didn't." Honestly, watching someone stand up to her was incredible. No one ever does that. Everyone's too intimidated by her social standing or afraid of offending me. His eyes softened. "You were brave in a way I haven't managed to be." Their conversation continued as they left the restaurant, neither ready for the evening to end. They walked along the riverfront, Ryan's hand occasionally brushing against hers until he finally took it in his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I have a confession," Ryan said as they paused to look out over the water. "I recognized your name when you introduced yourself. My niece has all your books and I've read them to her countless times. The artwork always stood out to me." Natalie looked at him in surprise. "Really, really. I even followed you on Instagram last year." He laughed at her expression. "I sound like a stalker now, don't I?" "A little," she teased, "but a charming one." The night ended with Ryan walking her to her door, their goodbye a sweet, lingering kiss that left Natalie feeling like she was floating. As she watched his car pull away, she wondered if this was the beginning of something significant or simply a beautiful moment that would fade into memory. It didn't fade. Over the next few weeks, Ryan and Natalie fell into a rhythm of dinner dates, museum visits, and quiet evenings at her apartment, where he would watch her sketch or read manuscripts while she worked. He was thoughtful in ways that surprised her, remembering details from their conversations, sending her obscure art supplies she'd mentioned wanting to try, making time in his impossible schedule to see her. "You're nothing like I expected a CEO to be," she told him one night as they cooked together in his sleek penthouse kitchen. "Is that good or bad?" he asked, stirring the pasta sauce. "Good," she assured him, "though I'm still getting used to dating someone who owns a private jet." Ryan laughed. "The jet's the company's, not mine personally, though." He hesitated. "I've been thinking about taking you somewhere, if you'd be interested." "Where?" Natalie asked, intrigued by the sudden shyness in his manner. "My family has a house on the coast. It's beautiful and completely private." "We could go for a weekend." Natalie felt a flutter of anticipation. A weekend away together would be a significant step forward. "I'd love that," she said softly. Ryan's smile was worth any uncertainty she felt. "Great, how about next weekend?" The coastal house turned out to be a stunning modern structure overlooking the ocean, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a private beach access. As Ryan gave her a tour, Natalie tried not to be overwhelmed by the casual wealth on display. "My grandfather built this place," Ryan explained. "It was his sanctuary from the business world. My dad never used it much, he preferred the city, but I've always loved it here." That evening, as they sat on the deck watching the sunset with glasses of wine, Ryan turned to her with unusual seriousness. "I need to tell you something," he said, his expression unreadable in the fading light. Natalie's stomach tightened. "That sounds ominous." "It's not, I promise." He took a deep breath. "The thing is, I've dated a lot of women who were interested in what I could do for them, the connections, the lifestyle, the status. I got pretty cynical about relationships." "I can understand that," Natalie said carefully. "But then you showed up and told off my mother," he continued with a small smile, "not knowing who I was or caring about it. And every day since then, you've made it clear that you see me just Ryan, not the CEO or the Nixon name or the bank accounts." He took her hand. "Do you know how rare that is?" "How incredible it feels," Natalie squeezed his hand. "I just like who you are, the rest is context, not content." Ryan laughed softly. "See, that's exactly what I mean." He leaned forward and kissed her gently. "I think I'm falling in love with you, Natalie Summers." The words sent a wave of warmth through her. "That's convenient," she whispered against his lips, "because I'm pretty sure I'm falling in love with you too." That weekend marked a turning point in their relationship. They began spending most nights together, either at his penthouse or her more modest apartment, which Ryan claimed to prefer for its actual personality. Natalie met his friends, a mix of childhood companions and business associates, and introduced him to hers, who were predictably starstruck at first but quickly warmed to his genuine nature. The only shadow on their happiness was Rebecca Nixon's continued coldness. Though Ryan had occasional dinners with his parents, his mother refused to acknowledge Natalie's existence, referring to her only as "that cafe girl" when she had to mention her at all. "It doesn't bother me," Natalie insisted when Ryan apologized for his mother's behavior. "I didn't exactly make a great first impression." "You made a perfect first impression," Ryan corrected her, "and her behavior bothers me, even if it doesn't bother you." The issue came to a head 3 months into their relationship when Ryan's father called to invite them both to dinner at the Nixon family home. "Dad says Mom has promised to behave," Ryan told Natalie, though he didn't look convinced. "We don't have to go." "No, we should," Natalie said firmly. "If we're serious about each other, we need to at least try to have a civil relationship with your parents." Ryan looked at her with such tenderness it made her heart ache. "We are serious about each other, aren't we?" "I'd say so," she replied with a smile. "Unless you've been helping me organize my tax receipts for fun." The dinner started pleasantly enough. Norman Nixon was genuinely warm toward Natalie, asking thoughtful questions about her work and sharing stories about Ryan's childhood that made her laugh. Rebecca was civil but distant, her smiles not quite reaching her eyes. "So, Natalie," Rebecca said during dessert, her tone deceptively light, "Ryan tells us you illustrate children's books. That must be fulfilling, if not particularly lucrative." "Mom," Ryan warned. "It's a legitimate question," Rebecca insisted. "I'm simply trying to understand Natalie's career." "It's all right," Natalie said, meeting Rebecca's gaze steadily. "Children's book illustration can actually be quite profitable if you're established, which fortunately I am. But more importantly, I love what I do. I get to bring stories to life for children, which feels pretty meaningful to me." Rebecca's smile tightened. "Of course, though I imagine dating Ryan has opened some doors for you professionally." Ryan set down his fork with a clatter. "That's enough." "I was simply asking—" "No, you weren't," Natalie interrupted calmly. "You were implying that I'm using your son for career advancement, which is both insulting and incorrect. I've never once used Ryan's name or connections in my professional life." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "You certainly didn't hesitate to use your relationship with him to secure an invitation to this dinner." "Actually," Norman interjected, "I invited Natalie because Ryan loves her and she makes him happy, something I would think his mother would care about." The table fell silent. Rebecca looked genuinely startled by her husband's intervention. I think, Ryan said quietly but firmly, that we need to establish some ground rules, Mom. I love Natalie. She's an important part of my life now. If you want to be part of our lives too, you need to accept that and treat her with respect. Rebecca looked between her son and husband, seeming to realize she was outnumbered. I only want what's best for you, Ryan. Natalie is what's best for me, he said simply. The dinner ended shortly after with handshakes from Norman and a stiff nod from Rebecca. As they drove back to the city, Natalie reached over and squeezed Ryan's hand. Thank you for standing up for me, she said, and for saying what you did. Ryan glanced at her. I meant every word. I do love you, Natalie, more than I knew was possible. I love you too, she replied, the words feeling both monumental and completely natural. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Natalie's career flourished with the publication of a new series that quickly became a bestseller. Ryan successfully launched an initiative that dramatically reduced the price of several critical medications, earning both industry accolades and fierce criticism from competitors. Through it all, their relationship deepened, each challenge only strengthening their bond. Even Rebecca Nixon gradually thawed, especially after seeing how genuinely happy her son was. The turning point came when Natalie gifted her a custom illustration of Ryan as a child, based on one of the stories Norman had shared. The thoughtfulness of the gesture seemed to finally break through Rebecca's defenses. She actually called to thank me, Natalie told Ryan in amazement, and invited us to lunch next week. Miracles do happen, Ryan laughed, pulling her close, but the real miracle is you, Natalie Summers. On their 1-year anniversary, Ryan took Natalie back to the coastal house where they'd first said, I love you. After a day of beach walks and reminiscing, he led her to the deck for sunset champagne, their tradition now. This has been the best year of my life, he said, raising his glass to hers. Mine too, she agreed, though I still maintain that telling off your mother was not the conventional way to meet one's soulmate. Ryan laughed. Conventional is overrated. He set down his glass and took her hands in his. You know, that day in the cafe, I was at my lowest point. Feeling trapped in patterns I couldn't break, suffocating under expectations I never asked for. And then you appeared, this fearless, beautiful stranger who saw through it all and spoke truth without hesitation. Natalie felt tears pricking at her eyes. I just said what I saw. And that's exactly what I needed. Ryan dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. What I still need every day, your honesty, your courage, your heart. He opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. Natalie Summers, will you marry me? Natalie's hands flew to her mouth. Yes, she whispered through her fingers. Absolutely yes. As Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss, Natalie marveled at how one impulsive moment of standing up for a stranger had changed the entire course of her life. Sometimes, she reflected, the bravest actions lead to the greatest rewards. Their wedding 6 months later was an intimate affair held at the coastal house, with only close friends and family in attendance. Rebecca Nixon, to everyone's surprise, was instrumental in the planning, her organizational skills proving invaluable and her relationship with Natalie evolving into something resembling genuine affection. I was wrong about you, she admitted to Natalie the night before the wedding. You're exactly what Ryan needs, what our family needed, really. Thank you, Rebecca, Natalie said, touched by the unexpected acknowledgement. That means a lot to me. The ceremony itself was simple but beautiful, with the ocean providing a spectacular backdrop as they exchanged their vows. Ryan's voice was steady as he promised to love and cherish Natalie for all their days. Natalie, fighting back happy tears, promised the same. I never expected to find you, she said, but now I can't imagine a life without you. As they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Ryan held her close and whispered, Remember when you told off my toxic mother at brunch, not knowing the grateful CEO would ask you out? Natalie laughed against his shoulder. How could I forget? It was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever done. I vote for bravest, Ryan said, his eyes shining with love, and I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for it. 2 years later, Natalie sat in the nursery of their new home, a comfortable house by the water. More modest than Ryan's family property, but perfectly suited to their needs, putting the finishing touches on illustrations for her newest book. This one was special. A story about a little girl whose courage changes everyone around her. From the doorway came the sound of Ryan's laughter, followed by the happy gurgle of their 6-month-old daughter, Emma. Natalie looked up to see her husband cradling their baby, his face alight with joy as he showed her the view from the window. "See those waves, Emmy? Someday you'll play in them, just like Daddy did when he was little." Natalie's heart swelled with love for her little family. From that fateful Sunday brunch to this perfect moment, their journey had been unexpected and beautiful. She caught Ryan's eye and smiled, knowing he was thinking the same thing. Some love stories begin with chance encounters and brave words spoken at just the right moment. Theirs had begun with her defense of a stranger who turned out to be her future. And as Ryan crossed the room to kiss her, their daughter nestled safely between them, Natalie knew it was still being written, one beautiful day at a time.